Hello, everybody. Welcome back to Found. Previously in Found, we had a mysterious letter come in the mail to Chip, basically saying you called me and I couldn't say anything to you. And if you call me back and tell me that I sent this letter, I'll deny it. But I think we should talk. I'd like to meet with you in the public library and in a conference room at 3 p.m. on Saturday. And it was unsigned. So that's where we're going to start off, chapter 17. Angela Dupre, Catherine said. What? Jonah stammered. That's got to be who this is from, Catherine said confidently, waving the letter in Jonah's face. Remember, Chip? She was the only one from the witness list who seemed kind of, I don't know, regretful about hanging up on us. Is regretful even a word? Jonah didn't care about words right now. Well, it could have been, what's that other one's name? Monique Waters? Chip suggested. Oh, no, Catherine said. That woman loved hanging up on us. She was cold. And the air traffic controller talked to you, not me, Chip said, so he wouldn't send me a letter. And this is definitely a woman's handwriting. Definitely, Catherine said. Jonah was getting a little bit annoyed with their junior detective routine. So are you going, he asked, on Saturday? Chip and Catherine both stopped talking. Both of them froze with their mouths hanging open. It was not a good look for either of them. Then Catherine laughed. Of course, she said, we have to. This is a complete stranger, Jonah said. She wouldn't even sign her name. She won't even talk to you on the phone. She sounds crazy. This is how people end up getting kidnapped, just so you know. Yeah, but she's got information, Chip said. She might know who I am. Chip sounded so plaintive that Jonah couldn't even argue anymore. If you're going to kidnap somebody, you wouldn't ask to meet them at the public library, Catherine said. That conference room B, that's where we used to have brownie meetings when I was a little kid. It's glass on 3 sides. And you have to walk through the whole library to get to it. I mean, it's completely safe. Jonah shrugged. He felt strangely dizzy, just like he had that time in Florida when he'd gotten caught in a riptide, and the flimsy little flutter kick that he learned at the Linston pool had been no match for those forces carrying him out to sea. Jonah's dad had jumped in and saved him that time. He can't save me now, Jonah thought despairingly. We can't tell Mom and Dad anything about this. Can't tell them we're meeting a complete stranger. Can't tell them we've been calling strangers. Can't tell them we took pictures of a secret file. Besides, Catherine was saying, there'll be 3 of us together, and no adult can kidnap 3 kids. How can you be so sure that she won't bring somebody with her? Jonah asked, at the same time that Chip said, what if seeing all 3 of us scares her off? She sounds paranoid. I think it has to be just me. Well, we're all going, Catherine said. There's no question about that. They didn't get a chance to call any of the kids on the survivors list that afternoon, or the next, because they were so busy debating their strategy for meeting Angela Dupre, if that was indeed who had written the letter. Saturday morning, Jonah had a soccer game, and Catherine had a piano lesson. But by 2 o'clock, they were both in Chip's driveway, on their bikes, waiting. Jonah focused on balancing carefully, lifting his toes from the concrete first on the left side, then on the right. He could straddle the bike for a second each time without touching the ground. As long as he concentrated on that little game, he didn't have to think about the fact that he and Catherine and Chip were about to do something incredibly stupid and probably dangerous as well. You didn't leave a note, did you? Catherine asked, breaking Jonah's concentration and forcing him to slam his right foot down on the ground to keep from falling. I did, Jonah said. Catherine rolled her eyes. The note was Jonah's attempt at caution. They had told Mom and Dad only that they were riding their bikes to the library. But in his desk drawer, Jonah had left a detailed note, a letter really, explaining they were meeting a woman named Angela Dupre, or possibly Monique Waters, and if for some reason they didn't come back, somebody should track her down. All the information about the possible kidnappers would be on Chip Winston's computer. Catherine and Chip thought he was crazy for being so careful. Catherine sighed, blowing the air out in a way that ruffled the hair on her forehead. I wish Mom could have driven us, she said. Nobody rides a bike anymore. I ride a bike, Jonah said. Girls, I mean, Catherine said. All of my friends think that bikes are babyish. No one had better see me out. She looked around anxiously. The street was deserted. Riding bikes versus being driven had caused a huge debate. Chip thought if they had a parent drive them, then they'd have to explain why they would have to be at the library exactly at 3 o'clock, rather than after their moms got done with the grocery shopping or before their dad started watching a football game. And Jonah thought that if they had to make a quick getaway, it would be ridiculous to stand there in the library calling a parent. Hello, I'm ready to be picked up. Do you mind not waiting till halftime? There's a murderous psychopath chasing me. What do you really think is going to happen? Catherine asked. Jonah shrugged. She had been asking him this question for 2 days now, and he'd never been able to explain exactly that to himself. He didn't truly believe that they were about to face a murderous psychopath. He just had a horrible feeling in his stomach that wouldn't go away. The garage door of Chip's house began rising, revealing Chip and his bike. Chip was grinning. "Time for some answers," he proclaimed. Jonah thought that maybe Chip was trying to sound like the donkey from Shrek. Carefree, glib, full of wisecracks, even in the face of danger. But it wasn't a very good imitation because his voice cracked. "First, we've got to ride all the way over there," Catherine complained. "What is it, 2 miles? 3? "We don't have to go at all," Jonah said. "Of course we do," Chip said, pushing off and sailing into the street. Jonah let Catherine follow Chip, and then he sighed and brought up the rear. It was weird how responsible he felt for the other two. Plaintive, pitiful, confused Chip, and naive, gung-ho, enthusiastic Catherine. He and Chip were both equally tall and gangly. It wasn't like Jonah had any extra muscles for fighting off attackers. There's strength in numbers, he told himself, though, pedaling harder to catch up. They passed the BP station where the high school band boosters were having a car wash fundraiser, the grocery store where Mom was right now buying peanut butter and milk and bread just like it was any Saturday afternoon, the neighborhood that, according to a quick Google search they'd done, contained Robin's Egg Lane, where Daniela McCarthy's family would soon be moving. They got to the library by 2:30. Chip was looking at his watch before he even slipped off his bike. "I still have to wait another half hour," he said. "I thought the ride would take longer than that." "Well, this will give us a chance to case the joint," Catherine said. Jonah knew she got that line from a movie. "And enough time to man our stations." Deciding how many of them should be in the conference room at 3 o'clock had sparked their longest and most bitter debate. They'd eventually reached a compromise. Chip would be the only one actually in the conference room, but he'd secretly have his cell phone set on speakerphone in his lap, and he would call Catherine, who would be hiding out in the magazine section. She would hold the cell phone up to both her ears and a walkie-talkie, broadcasting the other walkie-talkie to Jonah's hand. Jonah would be in the nonfiction section near the conference room. He would be pretending to read, facing away from the conference room, but he would secretly have a mirror hidden in his book, directed over his shoulder so he could see what was happening to Chip every single minute. The walkie-talkie phone combo would let him hear everything that was going on, so at the first hint of danger, he'd be able to storm in and save Chip. They had planned everything. None of them, even once, had said, "This is ridiculous. Walkie-talkies, mirrors hidden in books. We're going to look like fools." Jonah thought that maybe that was proof that underneath it all, the other two were every bit as scared as he was. They leaned their bikes against the bike rack and tiptoed into the library. They peeked into conference room B. No one was there, and tested out the cell phone walkie-talkie setup. "Okay, spy 1 to spy 2, Catherine said, giggling into the walkie-talkie. "Over." Jonah switched the walkie-talkie function to send. "Catherine, it works, but so help me, you've got to remember you're not supposed to be doing all the talking." At 2:55, Jonas flipped the hood of his sweatshirt up so it covered the walkie-talkie pressed against his ear. He pulled a book off a nonfiction shelf at random. It was something about tax codes. He positioned Catherine's makeup mirror in the book, angled it just so. Yep, there was Chip's face, anxious, pale, on the other side of the conference room glass wall. Jonah moved the mirror up and down, side to side, scanning the whole room. He switched the walkie-talkie to send again. "Catherine, tell Chip to stop fiddling with the cell phone," he whispered urgently. "He's going to give us away." Seconds later, in the mirror, Chip jerked upright. He put his hands flat on the conference room table, on top of the printouts of the survivors and witnesses list that he brought from home. He raised an eyebrow at Jonah. Over his shoulder, Jonah gave him the thumbs-up sign. Catherine's giggle sounded in Jonah's ear again. "Remember your theory about this woman actually being Chip's birth mother?" she whispered. "I think you can cross it off your list." Jonah started to say why, but then he remembered that he needed to be silent, too. Over the walkie-talkie, he heard a staticky version of Chip's voice. "Oh, hello. Are you the person who reserved conference room for 3 o'clock? The one who's willing to talk to me?" Frantically, Jonah angled the mirror, turning his tax code book almost sideways. There was a woman walking into the conference room. A tall, statuesque, well-dressed black woman. Very dark-skinned. Definitely could not be Chip's mother. "Chip Winston?" the woman was saying. "Yes," Chip said. "And you are—" The woman stepped in the conference room doorway and looked back over her shoulder. Her eyes seemed to meet Jonah's in the mirror, and she laughed. "Well, before we begin, I'm going to have to ask you to turn off your cell phone," she said. "And why don't you tell your friends to turn off the walkie-talkie?" I appreciate the ingenuity, but they might as well just come and listen in person. I don't know what you're talking about, Chip stammered. Yeah, you're not a very good liar, are you? The woman said. I'm going to have to remember that. I'm talking about the girl in the magazine section in the purple shirt and the boy in the tax section reading Guide to the IRS upside down. Jonah blushed. He started to turn the book around and then realized that made him look more guilty. Out of the corner of his eye, he saw Catherine standing up and rushing towards the conference room. He waved his arms at her, trying to send a telepathic message. No, no, go back. Pretend you're doing nothing. Act normal. Don't give us away. Catherine totally ignored him. She reached the door in the conference room and began shaking the woman's hand. Catherine Skidmore, she introduced herself. Nice to meet you. Thank you for letting me join. Catherine made it sound like they were going to be sitting around eating sugar cookies and drinking lemonade. Come on, Jonah, Catherine said. She's got us figured out. Jonah whirled around. But I don't have to go in there, do I? He muttered to himself through gritted teeth. I could stay out here if I wanted to. I could run for help if something happened. Jonah was surprised to see that the dark woman's eyes were sympathetic. You're the one I want guarding the door then, she said, watching out for trouble. You can watch from the outside or watch from the inside. I don't care. Doesn't matter to me. She looked around, scanning the rows of bookshelves around them. No one was in sight. Yes, I'm Angela Dupre, the woman said, holding out her hand to Jonah. You can call me Angela. Hesitantly, Jonah moved forward to shake her hand. He stepped through the glass door behind Catherine and Angela, pulling the door shut. But he didn't sit down at the table when the others did. He stayed by the door. Angela nodded respectfully at him, as if she approved of that choice. A little advice, Angela said, with a hint of laughter in her voice. The next time you do a stakeout, don't enter the building together. We're going to stop there.